I was sitting in my professor's office, staring at a glass of water on his desk, when he suddenly asked me a strange question. "Tell me," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "is that glass of water the same object it was 5 minutes ago?" I laughed. Of course it was. But then he continued, "The water molecules have moved. Some have evaporated. New air particles have dissolved into it. The glass itself has expanded slightly from the warmth of the room. So tell me again, is it still the same object?" You see, in that moment, my professor demonstrated the most fundamental crisis that has plagued human thinking for over 2,000 years. When you wake up tomorrow and look in the mirror, are you the same person who went to sleep last night? Your thoughts have changed. Your memories have been reconsolidated. The atoms in your body are in constant flux. So who exactly is looking back at you from that mirror? This isn't philosophical wordplay. This is the deepest question about existence itself, and it drove the greatest minds of ancient Greece to the brink of intellectual madness. Before Aristotle was known, philosophers were locked in a battle that threatened to tear apart the fabric of rational thought. On one side stood Heraclitus, declaring that everything flows like a river and nothing ever remains the same. On the other stood Parmenides, insisting that true reality never changes at all, and that change itself is merely an illusion of our confused senses. Picture ancient Athens. The intellectual elite are gathering in marble courtyards, their voices rising in heated debate about the nature of existence. Heraclitus had proclaimed his famous idea, "You cannot step into the same river twice." But he went further than that. He claimed you cannot step into the same river even once, because by the time your foot touches the water, both you and the river have already changed. Everything is flux, everything is becoming, nothing simply is. This wasn't just abstract theorizing. Heraclitus was describing the world you and I actually experience. Think about your own life. Can you point to a single thing that remains absolutely constant? Your relationships evolve. Your body ages. Even the ground beneath your feet is moving through space at thousands of miles per hour. Heraclitus, it seems, was describing reality as we truly experience it. But then came Parmenides with a devastating counterattack. He argued that if everything is constantly changing, then nothing can truly be known. We can only know something if it stays the same for a while. If Heraclitus was right, then the very words we speak would change their meaning before we finished speaking them. Logic itself would be impossible. Parmenides pushed this logic to its terrifying conclusion. True reality must be eternal, unchanging, and one. The world of change that we experience through our senses must be pure illusion. When you think you see a tree growing, you're deceived. When you feel yourself aging, you're confused. True being is perfect, complete, and absolutely motionless. This philosophical war was tearing apart the foundations of human understanding. Either knowledge was impossible because everything changes, or change was impossible because knowledge exists. The greatest minds of the ancient world seemed trapped in an intellectual prison with no escape. Then came Aristotle, and with him, one of the most brilliant philosophical breakthroughs in human history. What he did was so elegant, so profound, that it's still influencing how we think about reality today, over 2 millennia later. Instead of choosing sides in the battle between Heraclitus and Parmenides, Aristotle did something unexpected. He revealed that both philosophers were asking the wrong question. The genius of Aristotle's solution lies in a distinction that seems simple but revolutionized everything: the difference between substance and accident. When I look at that glass of water on my professor's desk, Aristotle would say I'm looking at a substance, not just the physical matter, but a unity of form and matter that maintains its identity through change. The water molecules moving, the slight temperature variations, the microscopic impurities. These are accidents, properties that can change without destroying the essential nature of what the thing is. But here's where Aristotle's insight becomes truly revolutionary. He realized that change itself isn't random flux, as Heraclitus suggested, nor is it pure illusion, as Parmenides claimed. Change is the realization of potential. Every being holds within itself various possibilities, which become actualized when the right conditions are met. Think about an acorn. Right now, as I speak these words, there are thousands of acorns lying on the ground that contain within themselves the potential to become mighty oak trees. That potential is real. It's not nothing, but it's not yet actual. The process of growth, of change, is the gradual actualization of the oak tree that exists potentially within the acorn. The acorn remains substantially the same being throughout this process, even as its accidental properties, size, complexity, appearance, undergo dramatic transformation. This insight hit me like lightning when I was struggling with my own identity crisis in college. I kept asking myself, who am I if I'm constantly changing? Aristotle's answer whispered back through the centuries. You are a substance with the potential for growth, learning, and transformation. Your changes don't destroy your identity. They fulfill it. What makes this solution so brilliant is that it saves both permanence and change. There is something stable and knowable about reality, the substantial forms that maintain their identity through time. But there is also genuine change, the real actualization of potential that we experience every moment of our lives. Knowledge is possible because substances possess stable natures, while growth is possible because they contain real potentials awaiting actualization. The ancient world stood in awe of this solution. Here was a philosopher who had seemingly squared the circle, who had shown that the deepest paradox of human existence wasn't really a paradox at all, but a misunderstanding about the nature of being itself. Aristotle didn't just solve an abstract philosophical puzzle. He gave us a way to understand ourselves and our world that honors both the stability we crave and the growth we cannot help but experience. When you look in that mirror tomorrow morning, you can now answer the question that started this journey. Yes, you are the same person who went to sleep last night, the same substantial being with the same essential form, but you are also genuinely different. New potentials have been actualized, new accidents have emerged, new aspects of your being have come into the light. You are both permanent and changing, both stable and growing, both being and becoming. This is why Aristotle's solution to the problem of change and reality remains one of the greatest intellectual achievements in human history. He didn't just resolve a philosophical debate. He gave us a framework for understanding the deepest mystery of existence, how we can be both ourselves and more than ourselves, both constant and evolving, both who we are and who we are becoming. If this journey through the mind of Aristotle gave you something to think about, consider leaving a like or sharing it with someone who's also wrestling with big questions. And remember, you are not just who you were, you are also who you're becoming. Stay curious, stay thoughtful, and keep seeking wisdom.